Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Rodan, and today I'm going to be reviewing another sci-fi film, and this one is titled The Night the World Exploded. It's yet another low-budget film, folks, but as always I do have to talk about the plot of this film, so let's just get into it, shall we? Oh yeah. As typical, like you might expect from these films, there is this doctor whom is this main character. He has perfected a machine in which he believes will predict earthquakes and has determined that one will strike California within 24 hours. He and another friend of his, this doctor, attempt to convince the governor, but he does not bring him to declare an emergency with no proof that the machine would actually work, which within 24 hours it is to be proven so. More specifically, I guess you can say, the main character is getting readings of which indicate a series of additional pending quakes around the world, which will of course bring chaos to the world if nothing is done. So something must be prevented in order to save the planet from itself, so to speak. In order to protect other people around the world, this device must show that it can actually work. This machine was built by 3 individuals in order to help further science, of course. And the thing is, folks, the governor, as mentioned earlier, is really skeptical about the entire project. And pretty much is hard to convince, I guess you can say. Oh yeah. I don't have to say that the premise of this film is actually not that bad. I did enjoy the premise of this film, especially compared to other sci-fi films of the same era. Yeah, there's thought for ahead of its time, environmental message, and a film will always get some points if it has a particular message. In this case, it has a environmental message of this film. So, unfortunately, the problem here is that there's so much damn time that is devoted to this love story between the 2 leads, this man and this woman, which unfortunately does drag the film a bit. So instead of the focusing on the interesting part of the premise, it's overly focused on the love part. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind having a love story going on in these kinds of movies. However, the way it was done in this film, it just felt like it was just dragging things along. So in some ways, the pacing is a bit off. The pacing did feel a bit, well, slow during the middle part of the film. So I do wish that it could have been sped up a little bit better, I guess. And some of the dialogue is a bit cheesy, quite frankly. But it's not terrible. This is not a terrible film, folks. But it does have the typical boy meets girl stuff going on. And it's not that well written, I guess you can say. I mean, it's not terribly written, I'll tell you that. But it does have the potential to be much better than what it was. At the end of the day, the film does fall flat on its face. This isn't a bad film, as mentioned before. It's not a terrible movie by any stretch by the imagination. I do like the premise. The premise itself is quite interesting, if you ask me. And I just felt like it could have been done better. I just really wish it could have been executed much better. And that's why in some ways I'm pretty pissed off at the movie. I would say, yeah, it's decent enough to be watched by friends or family and whatnot. Or if you just want to watch it by yourself. If you're one of those people that do enjoy vintage, obscured sci-fi films, I would say sure, check it out. Because this was a solid film. The acting itself wasn't too bad. I did like the acting. I mean, granted, I felt that the 2 leads, the woman and the man, were probably the best 2 of the crew of actors and actresses, if you ask me. While everyone else's supporting cast did a solid job. I can't complain too much about the special effects because, well, just consider the fact that this is a low-budget film, and the fact that this film was made during the 1950s, or the late part of the 1950s anyway. So yeah, this film was actually broadcasted in a lot of homes back in the day. and to some people who actually still remember this film. But after a while, this film did disappear into obscurity until it was, of course, brought back into the televisions. Of course, the film is available on regular DVD, but I do own that copy of that film, folks. Unfortunately, the print is in poor quality, so I do wish I could get my hands on a better copy of the film. As far as I am aware, this film was never available on Blu-ray, just on regular DVD, which to me is fine because I prefer watching DVDs anyway. Maybe it's just me, I guess, but I prefer watching DVDs anyway. I have nothing against Blu-rays, but I always prefer the DVD format. I don't know, maybe it's just me, I guess, folks. But anyway, so I guess I can say that the special effects in this film were fairly decent considering the time period in which it was made. And yes, it does have a certain charm to it, I guess you can say, and that's pretty good. There's a certain style this film was made, and I do like how this was produced. The sets that this film is used is pretty good, I guess you can say, because I like the staging of it. The way it was shot was pretty good. Yeah, it didn't come off too amateurish, really. I can tell there was some actual effort in which this film was shot. I can tell the director had a straight for storytelling and the way he had directed the camera work in this film, so it's not too bad, I suppose. The lighting was pretty good, folks. The lighting was pretty decent, I guess you can say. So it's not that bad, I suppose. So I did enjoy the miniature work that was made for this film, and that was really nicely done. I did like how this film was produced, and yeah, the print I have did suffer some damage, but considering the fact that this is a really old film, I guess that's much to be expected. The story itself is pretty much standard in here, folks. But the story itself, the premise of it, could have been dug deeper, I guess you can say. Yeah, there's this very, very dedicated scientist whom is really into his work, and he feels like he must do what's right. And he doesn't realize that he's in love with his beautiful lab assistant until, I guess, months later. Of course, I'm not going to spoil anything, of course. And so yeah, there's this strange rock that came out of nowhere called Element 120, or 112, however you pronounce it. But yeah, it has crashed land onto the Earth, which caused lots of earthquakes. And to make it worse, these earthquakes are all over the globe. Unless steps are taken to take care of the disaster, it will cause total destruction all around the world. So, but of course, I'm not going to spoil anything, like I said, folks. I would say check it out anyway, because it's not that bad of a movie. So, and I can say that this film is definitely something, it's not bad. I would say it's worth watching, I guess you can say. So, I did like how this film was handled itself, I guess you can say. And I did like how it was done. But the thing is, folks, I must point this out just so anyone knows. The thing is, the day that the Earth exploded is really, really over-reliant on stock footage of natural disasters, which makes the entire film seem cheaper than what it really is. I mean, granted, I understand they could have just not have to afford it, but they could have just used miniatures for this kind of thing, I guess. But oh well, I suppose. I still recommend it anyway. Again, if you are a huge fan of old-style vintage movies, I guess I'll still recommend it anyway, because at the end of the day, it's not that bad. I mean, yeah, sure, there's no giant bug monsters or of any sorts, and there's no aliens in here, folks, but I still thought this was a good sci-fi film nonetheless. It entertained me enough, and it didn't have to have any of those things. It would be fine if it did, don't get me wrong, but still, it didn't necessarily have to have that kind of thing to be going on. So yeah, it does have its own charm, like I said, folks. I did enjoy it. So if you have some time to kill off, I would say check it out, because I didn't think it was all that bad, because I see what their intention was, folks. I did see how it was done. So, I guess you're going to say that it does have an interesting premise. I just wish it was done better, I guess you can say. Science fiction had always had a male-dominant lead, and yeah, in that regard, it's a bit generic. Of course, there's a strong male lead. It would have been interesting if this film was had the main character as a woman. If the woman was the main character, it would have made things more interesting. But then again, I was always for strong female characters anyway, so maybe it's just me, I guess. I'm just saying that typically when it comes to sci-fi, folks, that it's often having a male lead as a dominant role. I mean, I guess because men are supposed to be extremely strong or something, I guess. Which is weird because I do think women can be strong too. And if I were the director, I would have had more of a female lead as a star with a good story, of course. While at the same time gearing it towards more the adult audience, I guess you can say, folks. Maybe just me, I guess, I suppose. Regardless, check this film out anyway, folks, because I enjoyed it. It's not that bad of a movie. I mean, sure, it's no masterpiece, but still. The Night the World Exploded gets an overall rating of a 5.5 out of 10. It gets a 5.5 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks for watching and take care, folks. Oh yeah. See ya.